in the rugged mountains of Kentucky, where the perilous wilderness road wound its way toward the western frontier, there once stood an inn that travelers mentioned only in quiet, awed whispers. Millbrook Inn, they whispered, delivered a kind of warmth no other place could match. Something far deeper than fresh linens and hearty food. 4 sisters managed this secluded haven, and exhausted travelers would arrive as complete strangers, yet depart feeling they had stumbled upon something rare, something worth braving that treacherous return trip. The Cunningham Sisters built a reputation that echoed through 3 states. Merchants would postpone their dealings just to linger a few extra nights at Millbrook Inn. Drovers would risk perilous detours across unforgiving mountain passes rather than bypass the chance to savor the sisters' famed hospitality. And those fortunate enough to have stayed there spoke of comforts seldom found by solitary wanderers. Attention so tender, so deeply personal that hardened men would choke up when the moment came to ride away. Yet in the winter of 1851, everything shifted. Travelers started reaching Kentucky settlements with unsettling stories. The road to Millbrook Inn, they said, was now strewn with deserted wagons and horses wandering without riders. Local officials brushed off the accounts as typical frontier panic until a disturbing pattern became impossible to dismiss. Dozens of men had disappeared without a trace, and the final spot anyone recalled seeing them was along that twisting mountain trail leading to the Cunningham Sisters' inviting doorway. Before I dive deeper into what truly unfolded in those remote Kentucky highlands, I need you to do one quick thing for me. Smash that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. You really don't want to miss tales like this one. And drop a comment below telling me which state you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers across the country who share my obsession with America's hidden, buried histories. What authorities were on the verge of uncovering would expose a warmth at Millbrook Inn that carried a cost far more horrifying than anyone dared imagine. It was 1831 when Jeremiah Cunningham finally lost his battle with consumption, leaving a prosperous mountain estate and 4 daughters aged 16 to 26. Nestled in the isolated highlands between Virginia's Shenandoah Valley and the Kentucky frontier, the Cunningham land covered 800 acres of rich mountain terrain, complete with livestock, thriving grain fields, and, most crucially, an inn perfectly placed to serve westbound travelers on the wilderness road. Margaret, the eldest at 26, had the sharp instincts of a natural entrepreneur and a cool, calculating demeanor that would later prove lethal. Catherine, 24, inherited their mother's striking beauty and an uncanny gift for making any man feel like the center of the universe. Sarah, 22, carried forward her mother's deep understanding of mountain herbs and their many uses. Knowledge that would turn far darker than anyone suspected. And Elizabeth, the youngest at 16, radiated a sweet, disarming innocence that could melt even the wariest traveler's guard. The Cunningham estate had been established by their grandfather back in 1798, when the wilderness road was still a treacherous path hacked through hostile wilderness. By 1831, it had grown into one of the most trusted waypoints for merchants, pioneers, and explorers bound for Kentucky's promised bluegrass region. The main house was a sturdy 2-story log building with stone foundations, perched on a ridge commanding views of the valley below. The inn itself offered 6 cozy guest rooms, a spacious common hall with enormous stone hearths, and a kitchen equipped to feed large groups. What truly set the Cunningham place apart wasn't merely its location or facilities. It was the reputation for hospitality, carefully nurtured over 3 decades. Travelers hundreds of miles away would talk in distant towns about the genuine warmth of the Cunningham greeting, the excellence of their mountain whiskey, and the luxury of clean bedding after weeks on perilous trails. Jeremiah had created something worth more than money: unbreakable trust. The property also employed a small, fiercely loyal staff. Ezra Hawthorne, a grizzled mountain man in his 50s, had served as foreman since the earliest days. His mastery of the terrain was unmatched, and his devotion to the Cunninghams absolute. 2 German immigrants, Klaus and Heinrich Zimmer, had arrived 3 years earlier, looking for steady work in the New World. They lived in a cabin on the eastern edge of the land and ran the livestock and farming operations with disciplined precision. Autumn 1831 ushered in what locals would later call the inn's golden era. The sisters, forced at first to work together out of necessity, soon realized they had an extraordinary talent for making guests feel not simply welcomed, but truly cherished. Margaret's sharp business sense kept everything profitable. Catherine's allure kept visitors, extending their stays far beyond schedule. Sarah's skill with mountain cooking and healing teas bolstered their fame for comfort, while Elizabeth's bright, youthful energy brought smiles to even the most road-weary faces. But beneath this picture of gracious mountain hospitality, something far sinister was awakening. The very isolation that once shielded the family from frontier dangers now offered something else entirely: perfect privacy, and privacy in the hands of 4 clever young women with few moral boundaries could prove deadly. It was a chilly November evening in 1832 when Thomas Kellerman rode up to Millbrook Inn, and with him arrived the first whisper of the darkness ahead. Kellerman was a cattle buyer from Richmond, traveling solo with a heavy purse of gold meant for Kentucky purchases. At 45, recently widowed, childless, and with few close ties, he was exactly the kind of guest the sisters would soon learn to spot with chilling accuracy. The temperature had plunged below freezing and light snow was falling as Kellerman's horse labored up the steep path. Margaret met him at the door with her well-rehearsed smile, instantly noting the fine cut of his clothes, the heft of his saddlebags, and, most of all, the deep loneliness in his eyes. A man riding alone just a year after losing his wife carried far more than coin. He carried a desperate hunger for connection. "Welcome to Millbrook Inn," Margaret said, blending professionalism with genuine warmth. "I'm Margaret Cunningham, and these are my sisters. We'll see to it your stay is everything you hoped for." Kellerman's face lit up as he stepped into the glowing common room, inhaling the aroma of Sarah's venison stew and watching Catherine arrange fresh wildflowers, despite the season. This was precisely what a grieving widower craved: a refuge where lovely, attentive women treated him like kin instead of just another paying guest. Over the next 3 days, the sisters gave Kellerman an experience unmatched at any roadside stop. Sarah served restaurant-caliber meals, perfectly seasoned game, warm, fresh bread, and her renowned honey cakes. Margaret drew him into long discussions of trade and politics, making him feel intellectually respected. Elizabeth's delighted laughter at his tales made him feel wise and admired. But Catherine delivered what Kellerman needed most: the illusion of romance. On his second night, after other guests had retired, she found him alone by the hearth, staring hollowly into the flames. She approached carrying 2 crystal tumblers of Sarah's spiced rum, firelight dancing in the glass. "You look troubled, Mr. Kellerman," she said, settling gracefully beside him. "Sometimes sharing a weight makes it easier to bear." For the next 2 hours, Kellerman poured out his soul to this captivating woman who listened with rapt, seemingly heartfelt attention. He spoke of his late wife Mary, their unsuccessful attempts at children, the empty house still carrying faint traces of her lavender scent. Catherine offered perfect sympathy, occasionally brushing his hand or leaning closer with quiet compassion. Loneliness is a cruel thing, she murmured as the fire dimmed. But it doesn't have to last forever. What followed that night was never documented officially, but Kellerman's demeanor the next morning spoke volumes. He moved through breakfast with the glow of a man who had rediscovered purpose. He extended his stay 2 extra days despite pressing business. Most telling, he began planning a return visit on his way home to Richmond. "I've never known hospitality like yours," he told Margaret as he finally prepared to depart. "You and your sisters have built something extraordinary. I'll recommend this place to every traveler I meet." Margaret smiled and accepted his lavish payment, nearly twice the usual rate, pressed into her hands with sincere gratitude. "We'll look forward to seeing you again, Mr. Kellerman. Safe journey." But Thomas Kellerman never reached Kentucky. 3 days later, his horse was found wandering riderless near Cumberland Gap. Kellerman himself had vanished, leaving only unanswered questions and a mystery no one officially pursued. Frontier logic assumed bandits or beasts. Only the Cunningham sisters knew otherwise. Heinrich Zimmer had waited in the woods half a mile from the inn when Kellerman rode out that morning. The German was skilled with tools and possessed the silent efficiency needed for discreet tasks. Kellerman never saw the blacksmith's hammer that crushed the base of his skull. His body was wrapped in canvas and buried deep in a chosen forest spot, while his heavy purse of gold returned quietly to Millbrook Inn. That evening, the 4 sisters gathered around the kitchen table, counting Kellerman's coins and mapping their future. Margaret calculated that the haul exceeded a full year of legitimate profits. Catherine had proven lonely men could be manipulated with startling ease. Sarah had shown evidence could vanish with the right herbal knowledge. And Elizabeth had demonstrated even the most innocent face could guard terrible secrets. "He won't be missed for weeks," Margaret said, stacking coins with cool precision. "No wife, no close kin, traveling alone to a place no one knows him. Perfect." It was almost too simple. Catherine added, still wearing the gentle expression she'd used on their victim. "He would have handed us anything we asked." What they had uncovered that frigid November night was worth far more than gold. A method to make people disappear. The winter of 1832 allowed the sisters time to perfect their craft and establish routines that would sustain them for almost 20 years. Margaret, with her shrewd mind, created a system for choosing ideal targets, solitary men carrying substantial cash, with weak family ties and flexible schedules that wouldn't trigger quick alarms. Sarah's role grew beyond kitchen and hearth, her study of mountain flora now focused on toxins and their effects. Pokeweed berries could mimic cholera. Foxglove could stop a heart seemingly naturally. Water hemlock could kill fast with minimal trace. She cultivated a hidden garden behind the house, growing deadly plants alongside harmless herbs, her private arsenal disguised as a healing plot. Catherine honed emotional seduction, learning to read men's deepest longings and become whatever they craved: pious for the devout, cultured for the scholarly, comforting for the bereaved. Her gift for transformation was both her sharpest tool and most unnerving trait. Elizabeth, though young, became essential. Her genuine, seeming innocence disarmed suspicion, and her friendly chatter extracted backgrounds, itineraries, and finances without raising red flags. Disposal logistics were handled with Germanic thoroughness by the Zimmer brothers. Klaus had found natural caves in the hillside, reachable only through a hidden rockfall. Bodies were carried there at night and walled behind loose stone, where mountain minerals hastened decay. Valuables were kept, identifying items were destroyed or buried separately. Ezra Hawthorne's role was vital. His spotless local reputation carried weight with authorities. When rare questions arose about missing travelers, Ezra would calmly confirm the man had stayed, then left healthy and cheerful. His honest face satisfied every inquiry. Spring 1833 brought their second victim, tobacco merchant William Fraser from North Carolina, carrying nearly 500 in silver from a good season. A 38-year-old bachelor known for traveling alone to keep all profits, he arrived on a rainy April evening craving warmth. The sisters executed their refined plan flawlessly. Margaret discussed trade and learned his finances and plans. Sarah served unforgettable meals that made departure feel impossible. Elizabeth played piano and offered sweet charm that reminded him of the daughter he never had. Catherine, however, sealed his fate. On his third night, she shyly asked him to read poetry aloud, claiming she loved beautiful words, but had little schooling. For hours Fraser read by lamplight, gaining confidence under her rapt gaze. When he finished, she touched his arm and whispered. He had the loveliest voice she'd ever heard. The loneliness that had encased his heart for decades began to fracture. "I've never met anyone like you," he confessed, voice thick with long-buried feeling. "You make me feel alive again." "Then don't leave tomorrow," Catherine replied, eyes shining with calculated sincerity. "Stay one more day. Let me hear you read again." Fraser extended his visit a full week. During that time, Catherine deepened their closeness, while Sarah slowly introduced pokeweed extract into his evening tea. Symptoms appeared gradually: stomach unease, mild vertigo, nothing to cause alarm. Fraser blamed travel weariness and the rush of unexpected emotion. On his final night, Catherine invited him to a private dinner in her room. Sarah had prepared his favorite dishes and wine laced with a precise dose of water hemlock. As Fraser shared dreams and fears across candlelight with a woman he believed could transform his life, he was already dying. The poison performed exactly as planned. Fraser's death looked like sudden heart failure from excitement and overexertion. His body was found the next morning in Catherine's bed, appearing to have passed peacefully after a night of passion. Even a physician would have seen only natural cardiac arrest in a sedentary middle-aged man. Fraser received a dignified burial in the inn's small cemetery, a clever addition Margaret had introduced. A proper grave with carved stone lent respectability while hiding the truth. The cemetery already held generations of Cunninghams, so one more burial raised no eyebrows. Fraser's cash and valuables joined the sisters' growing hoard. His wagon and horses were sold weeks later to passing traders. His disappearance was explained as a spontaneous decision to settle in Kentucky, an excuse no one questioned. By late 1833, the sisters had perfected an almost invisible system. They limited killings to 4 or 5 per year to avoid patterns. They crafted cover stories, heart attacks, accidents, or permanent Western settlement for any deaths at the inn. Most crucially, they forged unbreakable mutual trust, forming a conspiracy so airtight that no hint ever escaped. Just when it seems the horror couldn't deepen, the terror at Millbrook Inn escalates. If these chills are hitting you hard, share this video with a friend who loves dark true crime. Smash that like button to help the channel, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's keep going. Because the Cunningham sisters were only warming up, from 1834 to 1845, Millbrook Inn earned a reputation stretching across the mid-Atlantic and farther. Travelers spoke of it with the same reverence reserved for elite city hotels in Richmond or Baltimore. The sisters had achieved something unprecedented, a remote mountain lodge offering luxury rivaling urban establishments. Margaret greatly expanded legitimate enterprises. Quality horse stables for guests, a small distillery crafting fine mountain whiskey, even guided hunts led by Ezra. These ventures brought real income and painted the sisters as shrewd entrepreneurs, rather than mere innkeepers. Preserved guest registries in the Virginia State Archives reveal their triumph. Names of Charleston merchants, Richmond politicians, Baltimore land speculators, even Boston adventurers fill Margaret's elegant ledgers, many returning repeatedly and spreading praise. Yet beneath this success operated a precise killing machine. Victim selection became scientific. Catherine could almost instinctively spot men who wouldn't be missed. Loners carrying secrets that kept them isolated. Sarah mastered dozens of plant and mineral poisons with varied symptoms. Elizabeth drew out personal details through casual chat, while Margaret orchestrated every step. In those years, they claimed roughly 43 lives, the number later confirmed by the railroad surveyor. Each murder followed strict protocols, minimizing risk while maximizing gain. They sometimes studied prospects for weeks before striking. Take Jonathan Waverly, a Pennsylvania land surveyor arriving in September 1838. Working alone on state mapping projects for months, carrying valuable equipment and funds, he was perfect. His prolonged absences meant disappearances might go unnoticed. His job offered endless plausible accidents. The sisters moved quickly. Sarah served game Ezra had hunted, linking meals to the rugged life Waverly loved. Elizabeth showed fascination with his technical expertise. Margaret discussed local land deals, posing as a knowledgeable advisor. Catherine, however, became the decisive element. She presented herself not as a romantic lure, but as a fellow wilderness lover, displaying deep knowledge of flora and fauna, gathered mainly for poison research. She joined him on short surveying walks, showing ease outdoors that captivated him. "I've never met a woman who truly understands the mountains like you," Waverly admitted on one ridge overlook, his reserve finally crumbling. "Most see only chaos, but you see the hidden order. I've lived among them my whole life," Catherine answered, stepping closer. "They've taught me things no book could, about life, death, and the balance between." Waverly stretched a 2-day stop into 3 weeks, supposedly for thorough mapping, but truly because he was ensnared. Meanwhile, Sarah introduced escalating doses of destroying angel mushroom extract, producing liver failure mimicking mountain fever. A real killer of surveyors. Waverly's death seemed a tragic, but believable occupational risk. His equipment was sold in Kentucky, his maps added to Margaret's growing intelligence files. His remains joined the cave collection, his name recorded locally as another frontier casualty. The genius of their operation lay in sustaining flawless respectability. They attended church in nearby Millbrook, donated generously, and befriended local families. Margaret sat on the regional merchants' board. Sarah treated sick neighbors. Catherine taught Sunday school, and Elizabeth organized community gatherings. This involvement supplied alibis, character witnesses, regional traveler gossip, and unquestioned community standing. They also built wide business ties to explain rising wealth, land purchases, loans to farmers, even shares in Ohio River steamboats. By 1845, the Cunningham Sisters, ranked among Western Virginia's richest landowners, held up as models of female frontier success. Newspapers occasionally profiled the resourceful sisters who turned inheritance into empire. Yet under that respectable veneer lay the concealed bones of over 40 men who fatally trusted their hospitality. Each killing enriched them and sharpened their methods, feeding a cycle of murder and profit, seemingly unstoppable. The isolation that once hid them now perfected their hunting ground. Millbrook Inn had become a beautiful, deadly web. The end began not with police or angry kin, but from inside, one of their own. Heinrich Zimmer, the younger German brother, had grown unstable since a 1849 hunting mishap left him in chronic pain and reliant on laudanum. More sensitive than Klaus, years of complicity had eroded his mind. The drug, first given by Sarah for real pain, became his escape from guilt and nightmares. Addiction bred paranoia and loose lips, making him a growing danger. The breaking point came on a frigid February morning in 1850, when Heinrich burst into the kitchen, eyes wild from sleepless, drug-fueled terror. Sarah was alone, preparing breakfast for a new merchant guest already marked as the next target. "I can't keep doing this," he whispered, trembling. "I see their faces every night. 43 men, Sarah. 43 souls demanding justice." Sarah stayed calm but calculated the threat fast. Heinrich knew everything: burial sites, methods, details that could hang them all. "You're unwell, Heinrich," she soothed, stepping closer. "The laudanum is twisting your thoughts. You're imagining things." "No." His voice rose dangerously. "I know what we've done. I know what you forced me to do. It has to end." The tense exchange lasted nearly an hour. Sarah finally persuaded him to return to his cabin with promises of later discussion after rest. But she knew there would be no discussion. Heinrich had become a liability to be removed. That night, after the guest retired, Sarah served the Zimmer brothers a special "thank you" dinner. Heinrich's favorite dishes came with spiced wine laced with concentrated foxglove. He died quietly in his sleep. Another apparent heart failure. Klaus, more abstemious, survived but with lasting heart damage, now dependent on Sarah's care. Heinrich's death fixed the immediate crisis, but sparked new problems. Klaus began asking pointed questions about his brother's sudden passing, noticing similarities to guest deaths. Loyalty wavered under grief and suspicion. Margaret saw the operation fracturing. Their web of trust was cracking. Any real probe would uncover too much. She started contingency plans for possible flight. The last guest to die was Samuel Hartwell, a Savannah cotton broker arriving March 1851 with over 1,000 in gold and notes. A widower in his 50s heading north for mill contracts. He followed the familiar pattern. Apparent heart failure, after days of lavish attention and Catherine's intimate company. But Hartwell's death introduced their first major error. He had a firm meeting scheduled in Pittsburgh. When he missed it, his associate raised alarms that reached Virginia authorities. Sheriff Thomas Brennan, a seasoned lawman, began routine checks. Margaret and Ezra gave their standard testimony backed by doctored records. Yet Brennan dug deeper, uncovering timing inconsistencies with blacksmith and merchant accounts. Minor discrepancies planted doubt. Reviewing broader records, he found at least 15 missing person cases over 20 years tied to Millbrook Inn. Individually explainable. Together they formed an alarming cluster. Brennan investigated quietly. His breakthrough came interviewing Klaus Zimmer in town. Grieving and suspicious, Klaus hinted darkly, "My brother was tormented before he died." "The mountains keep many secrets, Sheriff, and not all should stay buried." Recognizing a burdened conscience, Brennan arranged a private meeting. Klaus's confession was fragmented, fear warring with guilt, but he revealed enough about nighttime activities, odd burials, and Heinrich's distress to secure search warrants. The dawn raid on April 15, 1851, brought 8 armed deputies and federal marshals. The sisters greeted them with practiced poise. Margaret politely helpful, Catherine distressed at any impropriety, Sarah offering refreshments, Elizabeth bewildered and frightened. But composure couldn't hide 20 years of evidence. Searches uncovered belongings of missing men, Hartwell's engraved watch, Kellerman's portfolio, letters and photos from dozens of victims. Sarah's poison garden and toxicology books revealed expertise far beyond household remedies. Hidden notes detailed dosages and effects tied to specific deaths. Klaus, facing accessory charges, guided officers to the concealed caves. Inside lay the skeletal remains of 43 men and thousands in valuables. Skulls showed hammer blows, others strangulation or poison traces. The trial became Virginia's most sensational case. Covered nationwide, prosecutor Daniel Hutchinson presented ironclad proof of a 20-year conspiracy claiming over 40 lives. Margaret denied everything, claiming planted evidence. Catherine crumbled on the stand, alternating denials and tearful confessions implicating all. Sarah stayed silent. Elizabeth pleaded coercion by older sisters and begged mercy. Defense argued frontier desperation and female vulnerability, but overwhelming evidence crushed sympathy. The jury needed under 3 hours for guilty verdicts on multiple first-degree murder counts. Margaret, Catherine, and Sarah were sentenced to hang October 12, 1851. Elizabeth received life without parole due to youth and cooperation. Executions proceeded on a bleak October morning before hundreds. Margaret met death coldly, silent. Catherine and Sarah held hands on the scaffold. Elizabeth was taken to Richmond Penitentiary, where she lived until 1888, always claiming innocence and coercion, receiving no visitors and leaving no memoir. Klaus, granted immunity, vanished, rumored in Ohio or Missouri, but never found. Ezra got 10 years for cooperation and died in prison 1854, insisting ignorance. The inn was auctioned. New owners failed to attract guests due to infamy. Eventually demolished for mining, the victim's cave was sealed, with a simple marker, still standing. Here lie unknown travelers 1832-1851. May they find the peace in death that was denied them in life. New Cunningham laws mandated detailed guest records, death reporting, and inspections. Lasting into the 20th century, the case sharpened scrutiny of remote disappearances, exposing smaller operations. Financial probes valued the sisters' estate at over $50,000, used for victim compensation and rural law enforcement upgrades. Modern criminologists highlight careful targeting, advanced poisons, flawless disposal, and perfect respectable cover. Isolation supplied privacy, reputation delivered victims. Margaret likely the mastermind, organized and antisocial. Catherine possibly borderline, forming intense but hollow bonds. Sarah's poison fascination suggests sadism. Elizabeth's role remains unclear, willing or coerced. The chilling part, without Heinrich's breakdown and Brennan's tenacity, they might have continued decades longer. Many similar crimes surely vanished undetected. The case exposes pre-industrial traveler vulnerability. Slow communication and perilous roads let people vanish unnoticed. The sisters weaponized hospitality itself against the lonely. Local folklore kept distorted tales alive, some painting the sisters as desperate victims, others as supernatural sirens. The mundane truth is scarier. The site remained eerie into the 20th century, hikers finding old buttons or rusted items possibly from victims. 1980s radar found grave, like anomalies, but ethics halted digging. The confirmed 43 may be only part of the toll. Archives still draw researchers fascinated by one of America's most successful serial killing rings, thanks to Margaret's meticulous records and Sarah's notes. This story reminds us how easily evil can wear a welcoming smile, and how isolation can shelter the worst crimes. Monsters don't always look monstrous. Sometimes they're charming hostesses offering exactly what a weary traveler craves most. What do you make of this tale? Do you think every secret was unearthed, or could more still lie buried in those Virginia mountains? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me what you believe really happened at Millbrook Inn. If this story hooked you, and you want more chilling histories, subscribe, ring the bell, and share with a fellow mystery lover. The past is packed with dark truths waiting to surface, and I'll be here guiding you through them. See you in the next video, where we'll uncover another forgotten chapter of American terror.